Welcome to Vision Plus, a program featuring a positive outlook, dealing with everyday situations of marriage, children, and business. Believing Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Teacher, author, speaker, delighting audiences from New York to Sacramento with a heart and message for the people today. Bonnie would like to remind you of the 800 number on the screen. Please feel free to call at any time throughout the broadcast and share your concerns. Leave your prayer request and someone will pray with you. And now, teacher, author, and speaker, Bonnie.
Welcome. You're watching Vision Plus. As the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. And you're going to meet a person today. I know you've probably seen her before on television. I saw her husband, Chris, in the last couple of days. Well, actually, as we're taping this, it was the day before. I think it was WHNT, and I think she and her husband both worked for WHNT, but we'll find out all about that. Her mother and I did a business together back in the olden days, as my little boy used to say, did you play with Jesus when you were a little girl, Mother? And I said, I think he was a day or two before my time, but sometimes my children thought that. But anyway, her mother and I, a couple of decades ago, did some things together, and I actually taught in her school, their school. It was Covenant Academy, Faith Covenant Academy, Christian Academy, and taught speaking and writing. And her dad and mother owned that school, if I may use the term, owned the school. And they have been doing homeschool, been 200-300 people that go to homeschool. In fact, I think your sister, Noelle, is going to be the speaker at the graduation.
Yes, at graduation.
Well, her mother was going to college to get her doctorate, and she told me about it, so got me interested, and I went from I had a few degrees in, but I went on and got another doctorate, or a doctorate there, thanks to sweet Nicole's mother. And that was Mike and Kathy Mays. And I know that some of you remember seeing Kathy on just very recently on this Vision Plus television, telling about some of the things she's doing, consulting and other activities. She always has a cart full of things going on. But now, what we want to talk to Nicole about. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And Nicole and her beautiful daughter Danielle is here, that I thought was 15 or 16. She says, no, she's 13. I really was afraid she was already in college, to tell you the truth. But so you married Chris Burns. Mm-hmm. Where'd you meet Chris?
We met in college at Lee. It's now Lee University. Back in our day, it was Lee College before they changed the name.
In Cleveland, Tennessee.
Cleveland, Tennessee. Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's so many wonderful people I've known over the years that went to school at Lee College in Cleveland, Tennessee.
Yes.
Well, this lady has a smile on her face, but she and her family went through the tornado, destroyed their home and church in Phil Campbell. Now, for you that are taking this maybe over the internet, Phil Campbell is a town in Alabama. So why don't you tell us, first of all, a little bit about Phil Campbell, where it's located.
Okay. Phil Campbell is in the southern part of Franklin County, Alabama. It's south of Russellville, and it's very small. It's a close-knit community, about 1,000 people. So it's pretty tiny, but everybody knows everybody and everybody's business, and it's a true neighborhood kind of town because we're all very close.
Now, when the tornado came through Alabama, and especially Phil Campbell, the town of Phil Campbell, where were you and your family?
We were in our home. My daughter, Danielle, she never has been afraid of storms. I like you said, I had a career in TV, and the kids grew up at the TV station with us during severe weather, so it never frightened them. It never frightened them at all. But that day on April 27th, Danielle kept saying, Mom, I think we should go to the shelter for this one. Can we please go to the shelter? There's just a shelter right around the corner, in the town community center. And we kind of hesitated. If we had been 2 minutes sooner in making the decision to go to the shelter, we would have been there and safe. But we waited 2 minutes too late, and we were at the house when it hit.
And tell us about the house, the destruction of the house, and all of them, where you and your family were.
We were in the church parsonage, which was on Belva Street there in Phil Campbell, and it was a full brick house. And I've always thought, brick homes, they're the safest. And I have never seen, and not just our brick house, but every brick house that this tornado touched, the walls, collapsed, except ours exploded outwards. And there was only one wall that remained intact, the brick wall, and it was on the carport side, which is where our expedition was parked in the carport. And if it had exploded out like the rest of them, our car would have been under bricks. And we ended up using that vehicle. Both of our vehicles were immovable, but we used them both for shelter for the neighbors that were stranded out there also. But we started to sort of walk out the door, and I looked out the sliding glass door, and everything kind of got calm. It was this really eerie calmness. The wind stopped blowing for just a second, and you just felt the pressure change. And I said, Chris, come here and look at this. And he came over to the window, and he said, there it is, let's take cover. And we kind of, the house is so small, every room had windows. And so we just got into the hallway. And we huddled together, and I'm thinking, it'll pass over us. This always happens. We always take cover, and it nothing ever happens. But it was literally less than 30 seconds that we were in the huddle position that we heard the first crash. And I think that was the only time I remember hearing anything other than wind. And I remember saying, I heard this crash, and I thought, well, maybe that glass door shattered. And I said, it's okay, it's only stuff. And we started praying, Lord. And then we felt the wind. I thought, okay, this is bigger. We just started praying in the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus, 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 and that's all we could say was just the name of Jesus. And that, of course, that seemed like forever, that first line. And then it started to rain and hail, and the wind calmed. And so being in TV, we knew that rain-wrapped tornadoes are rare. And so when we felt the rain, we were like, okay, we're good, we can get up. And so Chris, he stood up, and the wall had kind of caved in, was kind of at an angle. And he stood up to try to push the wall away. And he said, it's not over, it's not over. And he kind of dove on top of us. And I don't know if it was the second tornado or if we had been in the eye of the giant tornado and this was the back edge. I don't know, but another something hit us, and the roof was already gone and the house was already gone. And that one seemed longer and more intense and more angry. I don't get the whole freight train reference to hear about the winds, but it is the most violent, uncontrollable wind that I have ever heard in my life. And you just kind of feel helpless. And we just began praying again. All four of us huddled.
Your son was with you
also. Our son, our 14-year-old son, was with us. And I made eye contact with him one time. And I've never, that's the most fear I've ever seen in his eye. His name is Little Chris. And, of course, he's taller than Big Chris now, but we still call him Little Chris. But I saw fear in his eyes, and I just said, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And even though everything was so uncertain, and I didn't know that, how close to death we were, I knew I had that peace, and I knew that God was with us. And it seemed like a minute and a half later that second storm, or that second tornado, moved on, and we began to try to get out of the rubble. And Chris stood up and pushed the wall off of us. And the refrigerator had been shoved over and created a barrier at one end of that A-frame. And then the ironing board, which had been in a closet at 5 feet, not even 5 feet from my daughter, the door had swung open somehow. The ironing board had come forward and created that other cap. And then that closet was ripped away. You know, we've not found sheets or blankets or anything that was in that linen closet. But that ironing board, for it to stay in all that wind. But God had created this little capsule. And we, of course, you know, when we crawled out, Danielle was the first out and I was the second. And I remember, I don't know, it wasn't the fact that the walls were gone, that wasn't the weird part. It was the not recognizing where we were. You know, we thought maybe our house had been moved and we didn't know where we were, but we didn't recognize our neighborhood. You know, all of the houses around us were gone. The trees were snapped. There was this very heavy pine scent. All the pine trees around us were, you know, destroyed over or snapped. I told my husband I never want a real Christmas tree ever again, because that beautiful pine smell is now associated with, to me in my mind, with this. And it just that sight and sound. And then we started looking at the house, and the entire back of the house was gone. I mean, my bedroom was gone. No furniture. The flooring that we had just put down 4 months before was gone. You know, that pergo floor, gone. It was down to the subfloor. The bathroom that you hear about, jump in the bathtub. We've not found our bathtub. Don't always jump in the bathtub. Go to a shelter. But the bathtub, the toilet was gone. Everything, all of the pipes were snapped in two. And it just doesn't make sense that a piece of drywall and a few studs were leaning over us and keeping us protected from anything, from debris. I mean, we looked at the debris. Of course, you know, there's stuff going through the air and you're inhaling stuff. It's insulation, and I'm pretty sure cat litter and dirt and mud, and you smell this mud and you don't realize what it is, but it's just everything that the storm has picked up before it got to you. And that storm in particular hit Hackleburg before it hit us, and it destroyed that town completely. 30 of the 31 businesses in Hackleburg were destroyed. So it was a very powerful storm, and we're not lucky. We're blessed. You know, it was the hand of God. The two walls that were left were the hall walls where we were, and on the wall that was most upright was a shelf that I kept. Several years ago, we had a evangelist by the name of Joe Sneed come in to our church at Life Church Huntsville, and he preached a message about laying up mercy. And after that message, you know, I got to thinking about all the heritage of evangelists and church planners and you know, Sunday school teachers that I come from. And so I put those pictures up to remind me of all of the people, not just on my side, but on Chris's side. And we had that heritage wall, and that shelf in that hallway was our heritage wall. And when that other wall fell, the shelf caught it and kept it from crushing us. So all of those generations that had laid up mercy for me and my family, you know, God remembered that. And when we pulled the wall away, you could see the clean spot on the drywall where we had huddled together, and then there was debris everywhere else, you know, that, you know, broken glass. I didn't realize how much glass I collected until I saw it all on the ground, you know, broken in pieces. But it just...
And Nicole, your church was blown away too.
Yes, the church was just around the corner, and it made a straight path from our home to the church and all the homes in between. And whereas there was still a few walls left from the interior of our home, the church, which was a brick building also, only 30 years old, and it was nothing but the slab. There was a few bricks left on the slab, and we found the remnants of one pew, and we had several others. We've still not found those, but it blew. You know, it's not just one line. You know, you can't just follow that trail. It blew every direction. You know, and there's not much. We found the altar was under the front of the church brick wall. It had collapsed in, and the altar was in one piece, and then there was one bottle of anointing oil that was in one piece. So we kept both of those things. Of course, the altar is we'll probably not go into the new church because it's kind of been rained on and it's gone through it. But we're using it right now under the tent.
So you put a tent together. Now, in your neighborhood, I understand that the next door neighbor's child.
We had a neighbor right down the road at the end of the road that had a 9-year-old and his mother that were killed.
And then what was the story about the 2-year-old that was in the, I think he was in a cooler. Tell us about that.
Well, when several days after the storm, we went up to the community center, and there was an EMT who recognized Chris, and he spoke to Chris and he talked to him about some of the EMTs that are on his crew really needed, when things settled down, some counseling, because they saw and experienced as much as the survivors have, because they had to go back and they found people and they had to pull people out whether they were dead or alive. And he told Chris of this story and I'm not really sure where it was, but that they were looking and searching for people in this home, and they moved a cooler. It was a big cooler, and it felt very heavy, and their hearts dropped. And they opened the cooler up, and it was a 2-year-old, and they said, "How did you get in here?" And the little boy said, "The man with wings put me in here." And I've heard so many survival stories. The family that lives right next door to the church, Jesus is a Church of Christ, a Hispanic Church of Christ pastor in Russellville, and he told us, he shared his survival story with us. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share that. He and his family were at home, and they knew it was time to go to the shelter, so they jumped in their car and they started running down to the First Baptist Church shelter, and they got down the road, and he saw it drop in the rearview mirror. He saw the tornado, and of course he started praying, and the kids were screaming and they were praying, and all of a sudden he said, "I saw the tornado pick up this tree, this large tree, and it sucked it straight out of the ground, and it set it right on top of my car, and the roots were hanging over the sides." And of course they were very afraid, and that there was a truck in front of them, and one of the limbs fell on the bed of that truck, and it held it down, and the car started to try to pick up, and there was a car in front of that truck, and it was sucked up, but the wind just blew out of his car outward, not inward, and that tree kept their car on the ground, and he knows that the hand of God did that. And so he shared his survival story, and there's thousands of survivor stories where they know that God did a miraculous thing for them.
I can see that. Tony and I were in a tornado in Jonesboro, Arkansas, the same time a very bad one came through Alabama before. We were in the car, and a tornado picked the car up, and we stepped out into the air and got into the ditch. And the car was totally abolished. It was just not working. I'm sorry. There's so many stories that I've heard that of survival, like you and Chris and Danielle and little Chris, and it's just a joy to know that God is taking care of you. And I understand you had some good things happen, that you got a lot of people haven't even signed up for FEMA, and that you actually already have your money back to start building, and you got an apartment, which is a miracle in itself.
Right. The church had really good insurance, and their insurance agents are working with them. Our personal insurance, we're still fighting with them a little bit. That takes time. But God has opened the doors and led us down a path where we've got an apartment. We have an amazing landlord. In fact, we were in some college apartments right across from the college, and they're 1-bedroom apartments, but this landlord had 2 together, and he cut a pass-through for us, so it made it one larger apartment, and he's just been awesome. But God's just, led us into the path of wonderful, generous people. We have a history of, I didn't realize how many friends and family that I've had until something like this happens, and they all come out of the woodwork, and whether it's, sending us money, or if it's, giving us dishes, or showing up to work and cut down trees.
I first met Nicole, well, not when I very first met her, but when she was in high school, she came over and painted one of our walls or our den, and so I had first met her with her mother and in the Faith Covenant Academy, Christian Academy, and then she came and helped us through that, trying to get the house in order. So now we'll help you get your house in order.
Right.
And my granddaughter had moved out of her apartment back to her mother's house, so you're getting a lot of her things you had from her apartment.
That's
and
wonderful.
the neighbors, we were in Pennsylvania. Let's see, I was in North Carolina and Connecticut, and Massachusetts, and New York, and people were sending us so many things back that we had to pay $160 for our overage, on the luggage. I said, if I'd known been that much, I'd just give you the $160. But people wanted to help. They wanted to feel like they were doing something. And my cousin called from New Mexico today, and she said, I want to send some money. I want to help. And everybody, there's so many people like that they just want to help. I know we went down and helped in New Orleans, and that when all of that was going on, and now people want to help you and remember you. You look just like you did when you were a teenager. She looked just like she did when you were a teenager. Very beautiful.
Yeah, it's been really, really incredible. We had a community meeting this week, and even the city leaders said that they are just overwhelmed with the response from neighbors helping neighbors, and then total strangers coming in and helping total strangers. Phil Campbell has been so fortunate. The day after it happened, of course, everybody goes. We were there until nightfall, and they inflicted a curfew. I'm not sure if inflicted is the right word, but they needed a curfew. They wanted people who were able to leave so they could find those who were still trapped. And we were back there on Thursday, and already there were people going around on four-wheelers and little gators with cold water, saying, here, have some water. Just anything that they could do to help. And the outpouring of support, and there is our community centers, our warehouses are full of clothes. Right now we're still trying to get people back into temporary housing or some kind of apartment, because when you're living in a hotel, there's not, you just get what you need. There's no moving around a whole lot of stuff. But as people are starting to get their temporary housing, there's going to be things available for them, and that has just been incredible. It's been
You
incredible.
actually have a Hope Center that's been set up. You already had one, but this is a different one.
Right.
And you can still take dishes and furniture and
Absolutely. Absolutely. We before the storm, we opened in March the Phil Campbell Church of God Help Center. It was called Help Center then, and the first phase of that was our food pantry, because before all of this happened, there were hungry people in Franklin County. I can attest, it's hard to find a job there before the storm, and now so many businesses and industries have been wiped out or set back, and so work there is even less. But that was before the storm, and then Chris and I immediately started talking about how can we help people. We felt so stranded because we were trying to pick up our own pieces, but yet our neighbors are in such worse shape than us. And we felt that way, even though we're both sitting in our pile of mess. We're in the same.
Sheets, no towels, no sheets,
no clothes,
no dishes.
But what clothes we tried to salvage, it's got insulation in it, so you have to kind of toss those anyway. But so we decided to, as soon as we could, to reopen the Help Center, but we wanted to call it the Hope Center, because there is hope in Jesus. And I believe that mankind, all of our neighbors, because of all of their giving, is going to show that Phil Campbell, Alabama, is loved, and that we will be back. People want to help us back on our feet, and so that's why it's the Hope Center, and it reopens next week.
Oh, marvelous. So you can still help. And we want, if you have a website or an email or a phone number, we want that. Can you go ahead and give us that?
Yes, our website is philcampbellcog.com. And Phil Campbell, like a guy's name, because that apparently was a guy. Phil Campbell, COG for churchofgod.com. And Chris's email address and phone number is on the website there. Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and give us the email anyway?
Okay. It's pastor@philcampbellcog.com.
Uh-huh. Phil Campbell's PhilCampbell.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tried to spell it different ways, and it would correct me.
I have to always say Camp Bell.
That's right, Camp Bell. That's good. And you're still helping people and going to continue to, and you can take things. In fact, you have a semi coming in tomorrow or this afternoon?
Yeah,
tomorrow. And it will be bringing, what all do you
some
think?
Furniture, household items. There's some clothing. We're pretty overrun with clothing right now until people get their homes. Mm-hmm. But any kind of household items, sheets, towels, you just don't realize how much you need until you lose it all. But and food also. So we'll start.
Right now, you're probably wanting the food, the non-perishables,
yes,
primarily.
Primarily.
I know. And, there's been a lot of wonderful things from the other end. For instance, my daughter, I said, you can get in line for all the food that you lost, 2 freezers full of food. And she's a single person, has no children. And she said, well, I'm not going to do that. There's people that lost their houses and families that lost loved ones. So I'm not going to go and try to get my food replenished. That's a small thing. And my son, his house was leaking through the living room roof. The bedroom was so bad that he had to pull the carpet out. It smelled so bad, and shingles around. He said, I'm not going to go try to get that. We still have a place to live, and others don't have. So there's people on the other side that are saying, oh, no, we're not going to try to get, sign up with FEMA or anything. But if there is, you have until, I believe it's June the 1st to sign up if you have had major losses that you really would like to have help with.
Absolutely.
And so that's still going on, and you can. So what can we do to help you the most?
The most, I think.
In addition to the prayer.
The prayer. Well, the Hope Center is, we need freezers.
Freezers?
We need freezers because I believe that God's going to send
food.
And freezers and plastic bins. We
Plastic
need
bins.
Like Rubbermaid bins because we'd love to, instead of packing up another cardboard box or a grocery bag, give people bins that they can, take their things home in. And, and of course, we need to store things like rice and pasta. Put it in those bins to keep any kind of waste out.
And I understand that some of the people that were given clothes are using like luggage as their bureaus, as their chest of drawers, using the luggage. So if anybody has extra luggage that they can give right now.
Absolutely.
Because usually go up to the attic. We found a few. And at least you can keep some things in there.
Right.
And so
you tend to get really creative.
Yes, that's right. And we're just so proud of you and what all you're doing. And we want to help you all we can.
Thank you so much.
And so that'd be philcampbellcog.com. And I want to thank Tony for being here, Danielle. And we got Ashley in the other room working on the computer, and we're going to get this on the computer. But if you'd like to have a copy before that, well, you can just get in touch with us. And we want to thank you very much, Nicole and Chris Burns, and see them on television on WNCT. WHNT, I believe, where you did work. And I'm Bonnie Liphart. Bless your heart for watching.